Okay. We should have Dr. Vergara, absolutely, Christian. Okay, so once again, as this meeting is going to be recorded, the purpose of this dead hour dialogue today is based upon, again, what Dr. Vergara has asked us in her most recent op-ed about reimagining the educational landscape. How has our, pedagogy shifted, or, how do we adapt to not only the COVID, but again, instructing our students in a different modality. And so I want, Dr. Munoz to start us out, maybe with what has worked for him, what hasn't worked, and where do we go now in a post-COVID landscape? Dr. Munoz.
I think that one of the things that have happened is that students are unfortunately burnt out by COVID, by basically having to go through various protocols. And what we're seeing, I think, is a decrease in student work ethic, a decrease also in student responsibility. And I think that part of it is going to be trying to innovate ways to keep them, on one hand, entertained, but on the other hand, also engaged with the work that we're doing. And what I've noticed, which I find to be interesting, is that being a little lax, as I have been with what has been going on these past 2 years, students have on one hand flourished, but on the other hand, some of them have been left out. And we need to try to figure out how to reach to all students and have them achieve this level of success that they could be achieving with the knowledge that there's a lot of things going on in the world right now and in their lives that is affecting their school work and their motivation to stay here. Dr. Dennis, what do you think?
Okay, I'm here now. Can you guys hear me? Everybody can hear me okay? Okay. Yes. What I thought when I was reading Dr. Vergara's op-ed, and I've talked to her about this before, is I want to keep some of the things that I learned how to use during the COVID in my new teaching. I like the idea that we can meet virtually. I like really the idea that I can bring people into my educational house, if you will, from New York, from elsewhere, to really zoom in with my students. And so I thought that was positive, but I agree with Dr. Munoz is that I think some of us are just burned out. Our students are overwhelmed, overworked. And again, we are looking at students that are, having 2 or 3 jobs, that are, supporting their families as well. And so when we reimagine this educational landscape, I think, and this is what I see, not only in our history department, but elsewhere at Cal State, is that, one, that we need to make sure that we employ empathy in our pedagogy. And empathy does not mean that we lower standards or let them get away with everything and just issue A's like candy. But it's understanding that if we employ empathy, it increases our ability to really connect with some of these students that would be lost elsewhere. And so with my own teaching, though, I've really worked on empathy, not to, lower standards, but to really just meet students where they were at. And that was one of the things that I learned, from COVID, learning how to, to manipulate and to, create models and modalities that everybody could learn from. Tyler, do you teach anywhere right now? Or are you thinking about going into teaching? Let me hear what Tyler has to say.
Potentially a long time in the future. I just think this is a very interesting question, seeing where we are as a campus, where we want to develop as a department, as someone in the grad program who still has at least another year to go. One of the things that she mentions is the increased cost of commuting. I live quite a bit a ways from LA now. So in the one hand, that's kind of a benefit to me, the online aspect. But I also know that for others who don't have access to equipment, to reliable internet, that is a cost barrier that they are facing. And it's just trying to figure out where we are
It is
in
a
this
barrier,
post-college.
Tyler.
It's very
Yeah.
I kind of want to see where people's heads are at on this.
Mhm. No, it is a barrier. I think the pandemic revealed structural inequalities. Again, I have the ability to jump on to a Zoom anywhere I can because I have that equipment, but how many of our students don't though? And so I think with the teaching and our moving to Zoom and other modalities has really revealed these inequalities that I think as educators, again, we should address. So yeah, Tyler, absolutely. And I travel too. I live in Porter Ranch and it's an hour and everything. Some other faculty live farther. I think Tim Panic, he lives all the way in Moreno Valley. And so I am attracted to the idea that Zoom is great for bringing communities together and students from all over. But again, not everybody has access like I do. And I think if we meet our students where they're at and we understand that and employ empathy, that might be something that Angela was talking about in her, in that op-ed. So, Tyler, do you teach right now or are you on the way to teaching?
Potentially in the future. I'm still
in the community
at,
college or where else?
haven't really looked. I'm since I'm still in the grad program. I'm
right.
Just I'm fairly open-ended where I'm going.
Right.
But I do have an interest in it.
Yeah. No, I started in the community college, and you grow as a teacher. When I came to Cal State LA, you start to really grow when you're around the colleagues and everything. But again, the community colleges were extremely hit by the pandemic, even more than I think the CSUs and the UCs with terms of equipment and accessibility. I taught at Mission College in Sylmar. 95% of our students are first generation low income. And so they're not going to have access to all these laptops and cell phones to jump on a Zoomy, when the instructor demands it too. And so, when I was reading Angela Vergara's article, again, we're reimagining a landscape that is more equitable. That was revealed again to be just problematic during this pandemic. Christian, hi, Troy. Thank you for joining us. Hi, Diana. Thank you. Camille, thank you for coming on in. Everybody can hear me, okay? So we're just, having a little conversation real fast. But Christian, you guys, and Diana, what are your thoughts on revamping this landscape, reimagining, which I think, Angela's article has gotten such huge traction. I was on the CFA website and they've shared it. I've shared it, and people are picking up this idea that we really do need to reimagine in a post-COVID landscape what we do as educators. So Diana or Choi, Camille, jump in and give me your thoughts on this too.
I'm going to ask Dr. Suarez to share her experiences because she started her job online, right?
Yes, I remember she was hired in the pandemic.
So I want Camille to share what it was like. She hadn't, she'd met some of us when she came for her interview, but she started a job online. And so I think Camille, we are lucky, we know each other, we've met in person, but Camille, everything was online. So Camille, can you tell us a little bit about your experiences?
Sure. Hey, everyone. I guess in terms of thinking about the discussion that we're trying to have, it was difficult. So I imagine my experiences were similar to, an incoming freshman, whether they be a transfer student or a true freshman. It was, I think, a little destabilizing. It felt like, when is my job going to start? Because I'm not on campus, I haven't met people, but I was doing the work. So I think one of the things that would be useful to hear student perspectives on is, how does community building happen online? I think it's, it was difficult for me to feel like I was a part of a community because I hadn't really met anyone. And the first year that I was here, COVID hit LA pretty hard. So there was, multiple times when other faculty members in the department reached out to me and we were like, yeah, let's meet outside. but then the numbers went up, or yeah, let's meet outside, then, you know, the really bad fire season happened. So it just, you know, I think it was difficult for me, and I'm sure other students, to feel like optimistic about, you know, a lot of things. But I think, and one of the things that I really appreciated about Dr. Bagara's article is, you know, what are the sort of things that we can do as faculty members to, you know, address, you know, issues that I just talked about. And I think Dr. Dennis just mentioned too about, you know, structural inequality, community building, because I think those are things that really affect not only students, you know, quality of life at home, but also in the university. And I know there are some students here, so I was wondering, in terms of teaching online, or being a student who's mostly, you know, doing that through Zoom, what are sort of things that you want professors to be aware about, or to change in the classroom, or, you know, like, you know, assignments, ways that they check in, like what are things that work or don't work, and what are you wishing that, you know, professors, what do you wish that professors would do but really haven't done yet? Sorry if that was rambling.
I'll speak to this.
Okay.
I've been in the program for now 2 years almost, and all of it, with the exception of this semester, has been online. But it's hard to answer that because I don't know what could, like off the top of my head, I don't, like pedagogically, I don't know what would work. But the frustrations, you know, of the community building, I think, are shared. That you were mentioning, Dr. Swart, is like the inability to sort of connect on a more organic level, or like, how do you organize something outside of a class? How do you connect with people outside of a class? Just on a person-to-person level. I mean, from the event perspective, I know in Pat, we like tried to organize, you know, the movie nights and all of that. And sometimes we'd have like 1 or 2 people show up, with the exception of the board. You know, it's very, very difficult to garner any sort of, you know, sense of what do people want to do, or what could be good. It's hard to come up with the idea on the spot, but it's like the organic nature of community is to the losses, you know, so that's a difficult.
And that becomes a barrier too, technology, to create this organic community, I think, Diana.
Yeah.
Or, you know, yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that I got from Vergara's article is, again, empathy. And I talked about that. We have Kittia with us. I'd like to hear from her, but, you know, Christian and Tyler, since you are students too, what are some of the things that worked, you thought, and what could we as educators maybe focus on and bring into our pedagogy, or, you know, hone in, if you will, in the fall, if that makes sense?
I guess I can go, Dr. Dennis.
Okay.
What I can say basically is that the Zoom basically had its successes, but also it had its flaws, because the fact is, like, students like myself, we rely on the school campuses, on the internet, on the library. I'm sure the faculty also does the same as well. When the coronavirus really hit and Governor Newsom had no choice but to shut down, basically, okay, the school had to close down eventually, but there wasn't enough resources, such as money, to provide for the students. Like, I mean, I remember Spectrum. I had to get Spectrum, and the thing is, when everything went online, not just us, but when LAUSD K through 12 went online, it took like 2 weeks for the cable companies to fix the problem, where the internet was very slow because the amount of traffic that was going in. But moving forward, is that the thing is that I feel that too many professors got overwhelmed online with too many students. Like Dr. Vergara had about 125 students, or 150, for example, in her Latin American class. And one of the reasons, because other Latin American classes got shut down because there wasn't enough students. So they substitute or move students from one to the other. So that causes a lot of traffic and that causes a lot of problems for some professors. And I feel that some of the professors also now, some of them gave too much amount of work. And also the fact is that the students were being overwhelmed. So that also causes problems. But I feel that if the professor were to like many of them actually cut back on the amount of work, but still being isolated for 2 years and not in person, it really caused a lot of problems for not just for the student, but for the faculty as well.
I agree with you, Christian. I'm going through that CETO course redesign. And one of the things they asked me to think about is how many assignments are you assigning students? And I really had to cut back, not assigning the 10-page papers, but do smaller assignments too. And so I felt that with my own pedagogy, I had to scaffold a lot. I had to reduce, but still be very impactful and intentional and everything when, working with assignments on students too. So yeah, Christian, I thought about, I was overwhelmed. I think a lot of us were, when we go into this. I didn't even know how to work a ring light. I kid you not. I didn't know what a Zoom was. And I'm like, dang, I'm supposed to be professional and I can't even turn on my computer. And, there was times that my Zoom would crash and I'd cry, to be very honest with you. And my husband and my son would rush in to save me. But, it just, these things that we're not trained to do, all of a sudden we're forced into this to try to make it work. So I feel you on that, Christian. I think a lot of us were overwhelmed, but the department was also very supportive. I talked to Kitty a lot. Troy and I had talked a lot. And so we did have a group of support too, Dr. Lee, did you want to add to this?
I'm
so
soaking
glad you
in the
came.
knowledge.
Now I'm so excited to see your face.
I know, and I look forward to doing it in person one day.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
But I'm mainly here because I am really concerned. I mean, I imagine that's everything that, everyone, the reason why we're all here. So I have those concerns. And I was really just hoping to hear people talk a little bit more. And then maybe out of that, I would have some more questions. So I'll start.
No, that's fine. No, I'm glad you're here, Dr. Suarez, too. Thank you for, attending this. But, again, when I read Dr. Vergara's article, she sent it to me on Twitter and I was just, it got me thinking about some of the things that I want to change for fall. I'm ready to go back face to face, but I also like not sitting in traffic and I like being able to pick up my son, at a normal time. And so, it was weird to navigate that between parental responsibilities, but also educator and, my responsibilities for my students. Dr. Munoz, you had a question or a comment?
I think Dr. Suarez.
Sorry, Dr. Suarez, go ahead.
Sure. Yeah. So thank you, Christian, for sharing your experiences. I think there was a lot there for us to think about and work with. And I've done the course or the doc training too. And I think one of the frustrating things for me has been, I think the expectations and the assumptions about what happens in an online class are exactly the same as what happens as in-person class. And, given what's been said, it's just not going to be the same, right? The community building aspect isn't there. Is that something that we try to figure out using technology? Or so I think the very what is the goal of teaching online is a question we have to answer. And I think too, we have to, I think, and I know, we all have thoughts about course sizes, but, Christian mentioning that, one of the professors,
125, yeah,
that's a lot of students, and teaching online doesn't make it any easier, especially with what you were saying with, instead of having the one assignment where you grade for 1 week, night and day, as opposed to grading multiple assignments throughout the week, that's a lot of work. And I think that's something that I think maybe we really need to think about. If scaffolding is better for students to learn in an online class, then we have to rethink how big are these classes going to be for students to learn, and for faculty members to, get the appropriate, so I think, those are really structural things that we need to think about. a frank discussion about.
I agree with that, Dr. Suarez, and I had to seek help because I just don't think the assignments, we're going to go. I found even group work to be very difficult online, and I build community online all the time. My students have told me this in these reviews, but I was like, dang, group work is so hard. What am I doing assigning these students all of this busy work? Are they learning? Are they overwhelmed? I have in my syllabus that I can reserve the right to like revamp the class. And I told them, I said, we can't continue like this. I cannot continue doing all this grading for your writing. And are we really learning? Or are we just going through the motions? And I think going through the motions is what you were talking about, Dr. Suarez, to be authentic too, though. And so it doesn't, Christian. Absolutely. It doesn't. And then if we're overwhelmed, our students are overwhelmed. And again, when I was earning the PhD and starting to teach, it was always, you got to test the student. You got to have all these assignments because they're not going to learn otherwise. And I think we really need to revamp, are these assignments impactful? Are they meaningful? Are they just busy work? Dr. Suarez, I fully agree with that. Absolutely. Dr. Munoz, I think your hand was up, and then Dr. Choi.
Okay, sorry.
So I wanted to go on and discuss the question of empathy, as it turned out with my class, especially 3500, because one of the things that before the pandemic, I was very strict about deadlines. I was very strict about what to turn in your work, etc. And one of the things I had to pretty much adjust is be more empathetic and allow for students to provide more work, more leeway in terms of their work. So one of the examples this semester was this particular student who is an older student. He works, and he had been, pretty much late on all his projects. And the one project that the 3500 class was is the big data project. So they were doing their story map. And I talked to him and I said, I understand you're working, and just turn it in as soon as possible and we'll work with it. And then at the very last minute, which was yesterday, he turned in his project. He was very thankful that I allowed him, to turn it in. I think he was 3 weeks late. And yet he turned in perhaps the best project of everybody in the class. So much so that he's actually going to be presenting in the symposium. There's no way I could leave him out of the symposium because of the amount of work and research he did. If I had been not flexible at all, then he would not have been able to turn in the work that he did. So, that is something that I learned, this semester from this particular student. And I'm incredibly thankful that he did turn in this work because I was just absolutely amazed by the work. I could not believe it. But, in other years, I wouldn't have been that flexible.
Dr. Choi, your hand is up. I think so, yeah.
Of course, I haven't been teaching for the last 2 years, but I have been working with graduate students, and two things that occurred to me. One is, of course, I can understand if every 5th class you want to put it online. It saves students the bother of driving. It alleviates the traffic problems. But I do wonder about how you build relationships in a completely online environment. And we all know half of teaching is building successful relationships, right? Students have to feel a reason why they're in your class, and that's half the battle. The other thing that I wonder is about, do the weakest students get overlooked in an online environment? That's what I worry about, because when I was in class, the student wasn't talking much. It was easy to go over and during group work and say, hi, would you like to come to my office and meet with me? In an online environment, I I feel it caters to the stronger students
Mm-hmm.
rather than less qualified students. So I think there's a little bit of inequality there that we aren't worried. And my last thing is quality. What kind of education are we giving our students if we make it so easy? Because we all know, we've been through the system, it's hard work. You have to sacrifice your family. What are we sacrificing in terms of quality and trading it for ease? And so I'm just going to throw out some ideas there.
No, thank you for that, Choi. I appreciate that. Let's go to, I think, Christian and then Dr.
Yes.
Suarez and Tyler.
Thank you, Dr. Dennis. So, so what I was going to say was that, you know, the good thing is that during the coronavirus, the good thing was that Governor Newsom did not raise the tuition. I think that was something that was important to bring up because, you know, Governor Newsom didn't raise tuition during the pandemic because he knew basically there was no point in doing this because the fact is that one, re-election was going to come up soon. Two, the fact is that students are not even on campus, so there was no point in raise tuition. But I still feel that the state could have done a little bit more to help the students out, and especially the faculty. So Dr. Vergara's pedagogy flyer really did help me think to realize that, okay, you know, I survived the pandemic because I remember like in 2020, right before I even got the vaccine, I got sick with the coronavirus, and thankfully I was able to turn in my
I remember
final right before I was able to turn in my final paper. Then 2 days later, ended up in the hospital. Thankfully, I wasn't on a ventilation system or anything, but again, you know, it kind of makes me realize, how this situation really caused a lot of problems, because, like I said, the resources wasn't out there. The school basically also didn't do enough. I feel that they didn't do enough, and then some classes were canceled. I know it's not Dr. Chatterjee's fault right there. I know that she tried her best to accommodate students, by taking, a substitution class, but still we need to kind of improve on those areas, like learn from the failure and learn from the success of it.
I wanted to just add really fast that our experiences as students, I came from the CSU, I can't force my students to have that same experience. And so I don't want my students to sacrifice. And I don't want them to have to feel like they have to give up everything again to achieve that degree. And I think one of the things that Dr. Vergara's article alluded to is this idea that one size does not fit all, and what we went through might not necessarily be okay for our students though. And I would not, oh my goodness, I sacrificed so much when I went to CSU. I would not wish that on my students though. And I think when we reimagine this educational landscape, to keep that in mind, just because they don't suffer like we did doesn't mean that we don't bring quality into our classroom, or we don't bring standards or don't maintain those either. And so that kind of just what Troy had said, job to me. Dr. Suarez and then Tyler.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of also add to Dr. Chatterjee's comments about, what happens to, weaker students or, students with a lot more responsibilities for whatever sort of reason they might not, just have the conditions to do as well as they would like in the course. And I think that is, having taught online for most of my career at this point is something that I really struggle with. Because, I don't want anyone to fail a class. I want people to get a, as high a grade as possible. But, I think, as Dr. Chatterjee was saying, you can't just say to a student, hey, like, how are you doing? What's going on? Come to office hours. That doesn't happen, right? It doesn't happen organically. And I think, there's a lot of talk about online teaching being a way of the future. There's definitely reasons why many people want to do it, especially on our campus. And so I think, in terms of, thinking about the campus as a whole, there needs to be more infrastructure for students to get help. And, I think, Dr. Dennis, you said you were doing the doc.
I'm doing a CETO course redesign.
Okay.
And
yeah,
they tell us, Dr. Suarez, they tell us to poll our students. Have you done that?
I've polled students, so like at the beginning of the course about kind of like,
Okay.
right, what their situation is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's useful because then you kind of have a sense of, okay, this person is working a full-time job and taking classes. Watch out for them, right? But I think, the polling puts more work on the professor,
It does.
right?
But I would agree though that it comes natural though for me, because I was a waitress. Working class is natural for me to be like, hey, how are you doing? What's going on today? And I would ask my students that on Zoom to build community. And I think it just comes naturally for me, but that's just me though, on how I speak. So Dr. Suarez, I agree with where you're coming from. It is difficult. And like Troy said, we don't want to forget the student that is not comfortable online or doesn't show up to the course all the time. And I struggled with that too. I'm like, where have you guys been? And, so.
Right. And I think we're all coming from the same place here. And so I think, if the CSU system or the campus in itself wants to push online courses, because I think there are advantages for the administration and, the bottom line, then I think there needs to be more assistance for professors to do that sort of work, right? Like, if we need to think about, a student's writing or, any sort of skill that they're going to develop in the class, we need to have somewhere where we can send them and that they can get help. Or there needs to be a structural redesign with the input of faculty members and students to be like, what would make this class better? Let's say you made it out of the class with a C, or you had to drop. Like, we need to ask those students, where could the intervention have happened?
Right.
What sort of resources did you need? And then we need to think, because we can ask our students, how are they doing? And they might tell us, but there needs to be a step after, right? For not only us and, because, I'm willing to do that work, but I don't have an unlimited amount of hours in the day. We need the support from the university.
Right. No, I agree. And CETO pushes us to do interventions and do all these cute little polls and everything. And that's fine and dandy. But again, it comes back to work labor, what we do. And I find, that I would have office hours online. But again, I was just so absorbed with everybody when we were teaching online. I would not get off the computer until like 9 or 10 o'clock at night. And that takes away from my family too. And so if they're going to push for online teaching, then I think we should ask the dean's office or even go, whatever, to provide us with those structure. Like you said, Suarez, we do need a writing, yeah, I agree with you absolutely on this. It does go beyond just, hey, how are you doing? What can I help you with? What do we need? And, some of these hard questions I have asked my students. I'm teaching online for the first time right now. Every week I'm asking them, is this okay? Or am I sucking at this? Or, let me know. And a lot of it was just the technical side of things. And I would get so upset because I was going for perfection, but, I had to step back and be like, what's working and what's not. And, I think that's something that we should still continue with our students, I think, across the board. So absolutely. Tyler, I wanted to get to you. I don't want to be a hog. So let's get to you real fast.
No worries. Just thinking from like as a student who had to make the online transition, there's definitely this intimidation factor with online. Going for someone back when we started, I barely, if ever, talked in class. And as Dr. Suarez can attest to, now I never shut up.
See, that's good. We love what she's done then. See, there you go.
Yeah. And that was, it took a lot of work and to get to that point, but just having been on both sides, where I am now, I talk a lot, I take up a lot of time, and there are other people who don't really get that opportunity. And where I was before, I'm like, oh, is my input going to actually matter? Am I going to say something that contributes to this discussion? I think a large part of it is there has been kind of a loss of student community as well that is really affecting us. Back being in person, I break from class, hang out with other students I had multiple classes with. We talk about things, or even just being in small groups that sat next to each other every day. We've lost a lot of that, that connection with each other. And now now we're just in a online class where half of the classes blank black boxes or stagnant pictures, and we have no real connection to that. For purposes of online, I know something that helped me in particular was like some of the breakout rooms that we did a lot of the first year. I did that particularly with Dr. Endy, where we were all broken up on, you're attacking this aspect of this question with your group, you come back in, you share, and we discuss. I know there are like popcorn groups where everyone discusses something, and then one person from every group comes in again and they just discuss with each other. And then you get to know the people in your class, and that helps. But even that, it still feels like a Band-Aid solution, since online it's a very different format. And especially with, you got this big screen in front of you with everything at your fingertips. You have you're going to class on a distraction. There's a lot of questions with this. What if this is the future? How do we mitigate for that building all those connections purely through a screen?
Those are good things to think about, Tyler. One of the things that I thought was really startling to me is that some of my students are not comfortable at their houses, meaning that they're not comfortable with going on their phones to show that background. And I had one student that was LGBTQ, and he was always late and always flustered, and we talked about it, and he said he has not come out to his family, and he felt really restricted at the house, having to be on the phone in a Zoom in an environment that was just not very stable. And I think that a lot of my students don't have that, a supportive background or a supportive family maybe, and it's really difficult for them to even come out of their shell in class, but more so even on the Zoom and everything. And he talked to me about it. His father was mean and nasty, and he would just hide in his room and go on Zoom, and he could never really be the person that he wanted to in the class. And I think Zoom contributed to that anxiety. I think that we're not happy at the house because of things that are going on, and I'm just not comfortable as a student. And I feel that I don't know how to solve that either, though. And I don't think forcing students onto Zoom, or even forcing them to show me their faces, was the right appropriate answer as well. And so I think about the students' home life too, as we go through these classes, and mentoring as well. So thank you for that. Anybody else have Dr. Munoz, you have your hand up. Thank you.
Yes, I think that what you said about going to class and being face to face, I always felt that my classroom was a safe space for people to share their experiences and not be criticized. And that is, in fact, one of the rules in my classroom, that everyone could talk about anything about themselves. And the only rule was to be respectful of everyone else. And I think you're right. This Zoom has lost that sense of safe space in being able to discuss those things, which is important in a face-to-face classroom, where students are, in a sense, willing to discuss their narratives in a personal way, without feeling, in a sense, that that they're talking to an abstract form, or rather to a group of students who are sharing in that sense of community. And I think the more we can do that, and when we come back from this COVID world to the normal world, I guess, I think we need to refoster that, because I think it's something that has been lost, and I think we need to reintegrated into our sense of community in the classroom itself.
Sorry, I was muted. Dr. Suarez or, Dr. Chatterjee, do you have anything to add? Dr. Munoz, that was good though. And these are all good. I'm so glad that we're recording this, but these are all good ideas and just discussion. And we need to continue having this. Diana, let me hear from you though. You've been kind of quiet. I know you contributed earlier. Dr. Suarez, anything else that you would like to add to this? Thank you, Kitia. I'm so glad that I saw your face. I really miss you. So yes, sending kisses, sending love and hugs to you too. So, all right, we're kind of winding down and everything, but Diana, let me hear.
Yeah, I was just going to add that one of the situations that I found myself in several classes is that I found a sort of reliance on students to do some of the lifting of, assigning a book, and then we have to present, and then we were kind of offloaded with the responsibility of engaging, of having students engage with the readers, and then that felt like a very heavy responsibility, because obviously we take on the silences, the long silences and the pauses and the intimidation in ways that sometimes felt a little bit too, I don't know, like the first thought, or first, like I felt a little shortchanged, because maybe, that was a way of engaging us as active learners, but in the same way kind of like left us with the burden of like, what are we supposed to do? Like what kind of like, how do we act as teachers if we're trying to learn and also engage and also, feel like a part of a discussion and a community of sorts? Like that left, I felt that happened throughout the semester with not as a totally bad thing, but just as a trend, I feel.
And it's different, Diana, when you're face to face having to do that versus online.
Yes.
Because I stopped doing that because I would do it online, prep, let's talk about this or give me a summary. And then online is just a different ballgame. And I really had to adapt to that, what works and what does not work very quickly. And I'm still kind of stressed when I think about this. So absolutely, Diana, the burden, I think, and I don't ever want to place on my students the burden of having them to teach themselves. And I think sometimes when we were on Zoom, it felt like you had to even ensure participation. I didn't like that. So Diana, thank you for, again, contributing to that. I think that's so useful to even think about. Christian or Dr. Suarez, Choi or Jorge, did you want to add anything to this?
Yeah, I think Diana's raised a really important point, right? Because the whole philosophy of online education is students should be mastering the knowledge, and the faculty are acting as enablers or mentors in having them acquire this knowledge that is laid out in a scaffolded manner, right? So that is the basic principle of online learning. Face-to-face is, of course, that the faculty has some knowledge that is not readily available in the book that they're reading. They have some more, and they are actively transferring that knowledge to students and teaching them how to master knowledge. So those are two completely different principles. And I think Diana has highlighted something really important, where the responsibility is shifted to the students and how well they are mastering. And I'm not saying it's easy for professors. It's very hard teaching online, but I think there is a little bit in the shift of responsibility, which brings me back to my original point of our, not just our weaker students. I mean, Diana volunteered to come and hang out with me at the fall preview day. And I got to know her. We spent 2 hours chatting, and I can't substitute that in an online forum. I just learned so much about her. It was so wonderful.
Thank you, Choi. Christian, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I do. Just want to say one last thing. Going to what Dr. Suarez was saying, I guess, earlier, but also I agree with her, and I know that it's not easy for anybody, with the overwhelm of work going on. But I feel that if they were to hire like more professors, basically, rather than just, cancel classes and then transfer students to other classes. That's probably more suitable, like to get more professors full-time and also get also kind of like create more flyers to get students interested to take a course. Because I remember last semester, when before I think Pedro left, Pedro was really good at organizing flyers. Whenever a class didn't have enough students, Pedro was really on it, where he would create these flyers and put it on social media, say, hey, we need to get students into 5940 because there's only like a few students. And because I know for a fact that each professor needs at least 10 students. Otherwise, if they don't have that minimum, then they cancel the class right there. And it causes a problem, not just for the professor, but for the students as well. So 'cause I remember Dr. Chatterjee has sent an email to everybody else because one of Dr. Wild's class got canceled. Thankfully, Dr. Chatterjee came to the rescue and she was able to get students to take a substitution class for Dr. Indy. So that's how I was able to meet Dr. Indy, online and also through, in person as well. But we do need to get kind of like, create more flyers and get students to get more involved in the classes rather than just say, no, I'm not going to take it. We need to kind of like find a positive way to get them influenced, something that will attract them, and also hire more professors to teach those courses, especially the graduate course as well.
Thank you, Christian. I appreciate that. Tyler or anybody else, before we kind of end, do we have any kind of last thoughts? We can talk about this all day, which I think is great. And, I think we should revisit this, but Choi or Camille, do you have any other last thoughts for us? Dr. Munoz?
I just want to say, Christian, hiring more faculty. We have no control over the process. Sometimes the administrative tower allows us to hire one every second year. And sometimes classes get canceled because faculty are working on other projects, right? And so they inform us that they won't be teaching that semester. And as you know, we've been without office staff for a while, but now we have Priscilla. And so we will again be creating the flyers and sending those out. But class cancellation is part of life in every American university. Sometimes faculty get a scholarship or a fellowship or some other work, and then they cancel a class.
Dr. Suarez, do you have anything to add, Dr. Munoz, before we go?
No, just thanks for organizing this conversation. I think it's a discussion that's going to continue and needs to continue. Thank you.
Yeah.
Would you be willing to come to this again if we do it later on, maybe like in the summer, or maybe just do something in the summer where we can all come together and continue talking about this?
Absolutely. I'm free. Yeah.
Huh? Okay. This would be, I think we should in anything, because I read Dr. Vergara's article and I was, I think about this all the time. Since we've moved online, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? How can I improve? And I think I need the support of my other colleagues, and their input too. And I think this is very valuable. It's very small today, but I think it was a very impactful conversation though, that can lead to other things that we should be thinking about as a department. I wanted to note that I'm very grateful for Choi being inclusive of lecturers in this department. This is something that I haven't seen before. And I'm really honored that Choi asked me to, facilitate this dialogue, to plan this, as a lecturer. I'm not a full-timer at all, but Choi has been very inclusive of everybody, as a active member of our department. And I'm just very appreciative of that. So thank you, Choi, for giving us this opportunity.
Jorge, you guys are faculty. That's the bottom line. You teach more classes than anyone else between the two of you. I don't know what you're talking about, but thank you for organizing this and so many other things for the department. I am so grateful to you.
No, we are grateful for that. One of the things that I liked about the pandemic, and there was a lot, I lost 5 family members over the pandemic, one of which was my son's first babysitter. She had died of cancer, but I was going to say one of the things that I'm grateful for was that it really forced me to level up with my pedagogy and my own teaching style, and to really, reflect and sit with things that I needed to sit with, and bring, a better style of teaching, perhaps, into the classroom. And so the pandemic, if anything, just had me sit and think, and I needed to do that think about my teaching, think about why I'm even here as an educator, what my purpose and plan was. And so doing these events and, things that I did with my grant that I earned, I think, just really strengthened myself as an educator. And I'm really grateful for the support that the department has shown me as a faculty member. So I think we should continue this, Dr. Suarez. We can join together and plan something later if you would like. I'm just glad that Angela's article was gaining traction. I'm so impressed with the comments online that, I'm having with CSUN philosophers or Dominguez Hills, historians about what she's asking us to do. And I think it's worthy that we still continue doing this. So Troy or Dr. Suarez, you want to close us out with anything else? Or Dr. Munoz is going to keep us here. I see a hand up. He's one of those students. I'm telling you right now.
He is.
He is.
I'd like to just say, first of all, thank you for allowing me to co-host with Dr. Dennis. And second, one of the things that I haven't really discussed, and because I'm learning about right now and doing research on, is the idea of liberation pedagogy, which is trying to put together a view of both working with the community as well as changing my ways of teaching the course and providing options for students to turn in different types of work that may work for them more so than just writing an essay. For some students, writing an essay will be better. For other students, writing, for example, or doing a story map, learning about a specific, let's say, temple or religion may be better than simply writing an essay. So the idea of liberation, the theology, is twofold, which would be, within the classroom and outside the classroom. And that is something that I'm trying to learn more and apply. I think I'm afraid to apply it because, I'm afraid of failing in applying it. But at the same time, I think I can gain from knowledge from failing, in terms of applying this. And I saw a discussion by Lani Kupchoy, where she actually applied liberation theology, pedagogy to the classroom. And so I see it can be done. It's just a matter of putting a little bit more thought into it. So one of the things that I'm hoping to do for the fall is, in fact, take one class and apply this idea where I'm going to have multiple ways in which students can turn in their work, whether it be doing a story map, doing an essay, doing this, and provide options. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I think it'll be fun trying to figure it out and see if it works. And then maybe present it as a a prototype to a new type of class and see what happens. And I think it would be nice to present it in another dead-hour discussion, to see how it's set up and work. So to that, I want to say just thank you for the opportunity to do this, because it allows me to hear what you are all saying, but also to apply some of that into my classroom.
Thank you for that. I think as we close this.
Did we lose Dawn and Jorge? Dawn?
Hello, can you hear me still?
Yeah,
Troy, can you hear me?
yeah, we can hear
Okay.
you.
I just wanted to close out that the pandemic really made me, uncomfortable in the sense that it made me grow, though. Things were not working. I learned not to cry and break down. When the Zoom went out, I just learned to get right back on, sign in. My students are going to be there. And so that uncomfortable, feeling that I had really fueled me to grow in other areas, though, to get that grant and to, create a virtual exhibit and just do things that I didn't even think I was trying to do, Can everybody hear me still, right? Okay.
Let me in.
Yeah. Oh, let me, okay. Oh, Jorge let himself out. Hold on, let me let him in. So I just wanted to kind of close with that. That this has been a growing experience. I think we still will grow. And I think what Dr. Suarez says that, again, we need to really rethink or revamp or just reassess, our reliance upon, online and really what we can take from that as well. Let me go ahead and let Dr. Munoz back in. I don't see you get added in. Are you not in yet? Okay. Any other last comments before we end?
No.
Anything else? Dr. Choi, are you okay?
No,
Tyler,
I'm-
thank you for going. Diana, thank you for coming today. Christian, always.
Thank you, guys.
And
Thank you for
Dr. Munoz
opening this up to
apologized
us.
again. We're in the office, so something happened, but Dr. Suarez, it's nice to see you again. I met you one time when I was going out and you were coming in with Choi. And so I'm just glad that you're still here doing good things. I appreciate you.
Hopefully in the fall, we'll do it in person. We'll talk about online teaching in person. How cool will that be?
That'll be
I
weird,
think it
though,
will.
right?
Yeah. I know Dr. Suarez is like my son who's been in junior high all online. All online. And I was in junior high. We were, ditching. We were doing some things. And my poor son is online. His whole entire thing is online. I'm hopefully that when he goes to high school to be face to face. So I am looking forward to these conversations in the fall. And I think we should. I think with Choi's leadership, it's always an open door thing with her. And I appreciate that. So with that said, Dr. Munoz and I would like to thank you for participating today. And, even the three of us, it was very impactful. And I am very grateful for Diana, Tyler, and Christian that attended too. So with that, I will send you on your way. I'm sending good energy to you. Have a great rest of your week. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Thank you. Okay, that was good, right?
Yeah, that was actually pretty good.
Okay.
I totally picked up on that.
I don't know what I was doing on my